Good to be with you, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Stu. Yeah, it's fantastic we finally made some time. I know we've been trying to lock down time to chat for a while.
Yeah, you're juggling a lot of things, as am I.
Yes.
I was looking through your Facebook page, going through all the different projects that you're a part of, or that you founded, and that you're the primary director of. Can you go through all of your projects, really?
All of them take some time. I can go through some of the relevant ones to where I'm at the moment.
Yeah.
So I have a film production company called Blue Forest, and we are currently finishing up a TV series for the ABC, and we have a feature film which is doing really well at the moment, doing the festival circuit, and that's been a really big part of my life for the last decade. I have a company called Good Times Arts that puts on a festival called Camp Doogs, a music and arts festival. I have many music projects. The main one I'm focusing on at the moment is called Selfless Orchestra, but I also have a band called Injured Ninja and an electronic project called Doublethink Prison at the moment. And I think they're probably the most relevant ones.
Yeah.
There's probably a few more. I have a lot of plants growing in my garden.
Amazing.
I'm watering.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
So you do have a formalized, regular yoga practice, yeah?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What would you describe it as?
At the moment, I am doing a minimum 30 minutes of Vipassana meditation in the morning, followed by a 30-minute yogic practice for my body, just my own set of asana. And that's just as a regular start to my day to kind of clear my mind. And beyond that, I just participate in workshops, groups, and a regular Iyengar class I found right near my house, which is just very humble and beautiful.
Great.
And there's a small room that fits maybe 12 people, and I'm the youngest person in the class. It's really nice. So I was stuck into a nice little humble traditional yoga, and it's done so much for my body, my general health, but also my mind. And to realize this connection, there's a lot of separate ideals for how we should treat our mind and purify our mind, and separate ideas for how we should treat our body, but they are so interconnected, and it's really about uniting this. And the yoga practice of physical yoga made me realize I thought it was just an exercise. It's not an exercise, it's a meditation, using the body to access those deeper states of thought and consciousness. And I've investigated many different modalities of finding clarity and navigating this reality, but yoga practice has been one of the most humble and honest ways of just finding peace within being. So I'm very thankful for that.
Wonderful. And you've brought that into Camp Doogs now as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
The last couple. Have you always, or?
In terms of yoga classes, yeah, there's always been some.
Okay.
In the first couple of years, it was cheese tasting yoga.
Oh, good.
So that's a pretty good example.
I've never heard of that. Explain.
I think the first Camp Doogs, for those playing at home, Camp Doogs is a very underground music festival I run with a group of friends, and we've done 5 iterations of it. We always do it in a secluded bushland area. My intuition is to kind of bring people from the city who are, again, in that world of music and performance entertainment and the bars and nightclub scene, to take them into nature under the guise of being entertained, but really the end result is they'll fall in love with what's around them. That's the true thing that stays with people, is the location. We always have a secret lineup, but we make sure to book a variety of acts with male and female gender balance of all genres and all flavours, but no one will know what they're going to see until they arrive. So everyone comes based on trust, without expectations, which creates a very loving atmosphere of gratitude between everybody there. And it's been it's been pretty big on my heart, that project. As I'm sure doing flow, the amount of energy as a facilitator of something of that size, that kind of you become a conduit for a lot of people's energy, and that's powerful. And sometimes it can destroy you, let's be honest, physically, mentally. But what it's done for the community of young creative minds in Perth, so especially there's a lot of kids who come, like 18-year-olds who never camped before.
Right.
One of my favourite things I saw in the first year was someone said it was the first time they felt they could truly be themselves was at this festival, and it's like, we do provide this community of acceptance for the geeky, nerdy kids that might be into a bit of alternative music and just trying to find their place.
What age group mainly would you?
As a big range, you know, but we definitely have struck a chord with some of like the young 18, 19-year-olds, but, you know, we have friends who are in their 40s and 50s who come down with their kids as well. So like we do with the music and programming, we try and do the wide gamut of everything to show the range of creativity that exists in Perth, in Australia, and now internationally. And, you know, for that reason, it kind of just lets people know what exists outside their own little subcultural circles as well, introduces them to new ideas, sounds, and perspectives of the world. So it's a really special thing.
Totally.
And it's I never expected to run a festival. It was like, oh, maybe one day when I'm an old mate, I'll put on a music festival. And then it materialized, you know, in my 20s. I'm like, oh, shit, I've already done it. Okay, let's see where this goes.
That is very special. I hadn't camped, I think, a couple of times in primary school because of school outings and whatnot. But I hadn't camped until like Southbound, until I would have been late teens or 20s.
Yeah.
And that was quite profound. But to be in these magical lands in the hills and whatnot, to do it in that context really is powerful and beautiful.
And out of phone range is a big thing. So we have this younger generation who have always been connected to the internet, to communication. They're put in, we kind of put them in the deep end, you know, put them out of nature where they can't use their phones. And that is liberating.
That is good.
For a young mind. You know?
Yeah.
It's really nice to create those spaces where people go back to that basic communication and trust and judgment of where they are and back to the present moment, which is where we need to be. You know? So there's some really nice, even on a subtle level, some yogic lessons that come in there, you know, in a way. But really, at the end of the day, we just want to create a really great party where everyone feels accepted and responsible for themselves.
Yeah.
So Cheese Yoga was the first year we did it. We were unsure of how we're going to put it together. So we decided we'd do a crowdfunding campaign. So we filmed this crowdfunding video on green screen. Two of my colleagues who put on the festival, another man called Stephen Belair and Matt Aiken. They have a really funny vibe. So we put them on the green screen. I was behind the camera. And we just told them to say random things like, you know, what we might do if you can give us some money to fundraise it. Once we shot the video, I realized, this doesn't make sense to me, actually. It doesn't feel right to ask for money to put on the festival when we're probably going to sell tickets anyway. So I re-edited the video to take out all the parts where we said, please donate. So what ended up happening, we got a very disjointed video that was quite absurd, but that made it very interesting for people to, and we didn't really reveal much at all. It was just like very avant-garde style.
I love your videos. I love those Doogs green screen videos. They're great.
So that's the thing. They're entertaining and they're absurd. And it wasn't ever really intentionally absurd. It kind of accidentally became that way. And so something that was jamming on is like, they were saying a sentence like, you know, we're going to do some activities. If you could fundraise for the campaign, we'll do yoga, we'll do cheese tasting. And then Matt was like, we'll do cheese tasting and yoga at the same time. Cheese yoga. And then, of course, we put that in the video and then everyone was like, well, are you going to do it? And I'm like, well, I guess we have to now. So we have always had yoga, but when you form your pose, someone comes around and places a piece of
classic
locally cultured cheese. Not if you're a vegan, of course. But,
you can get vegan cheese now.
You can get vegan cheese. So
vegan butter.
Yeah, we'll step into the real 21st century and have vegan cheese tasting yoga at some point, I'm sure.
Classic. Yeah. I have heard of beer yoga, vodka yoga, goat yoga.
It's all there.
Haven't heard of cheese yoga until now.
That's
thank you for adding that to my yoga smorgasbord.
Yeah, that's right. Well, makes sense you have a smorgasbord if you're doing cheese yoga, for sure. So, no, we've put in a lot of things. We like creating spaces for people to share their community ideas. So we have a tent that was like an open mic stage that ended up becoming this seminars and workshop stage, and we collaborated with like Safer Venues WA and Women in Music Production. We have like RTR podcast shows come in and do them live at Doogs and things like that. So it's not just music, but also other forms of creativity, which is just general community building. And we just like getting in touch with the magic of the land.
Magic.
The last Camp Doogs, I staged 2 sunset rituals in the fruit orchard there, just to celebrate the sun passing. First night was with some gong players and vocalists, And the second night we played on a giant deformed piano that we struck with mallets.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we just like bringing different things in every time. And my biggest inspiration is the land, is the country, And if we can send home a bunch of kids who have never really ventured out of the city before with this new appreciation of nature and respect for the environment, then that's one of my goals for that festival.
It's a wonderful goal. That combination of being on nature, live music, not to mention the power of ceremony, community, all of that is a powerful combination, especially for these young kids, where we have it all at our fingertips. One could just put a playlist of music on their YouTube, on their Spotify, and create it just in their own lounge room. But we miss out on that connection, that interconnection and community and nature. So it's super important, and I think as things get more and more virtual with all this virtual reality and the online information and what we can get online, which is great, I think it is isolating more and more people. I think
Definitely.
It's an interesting irony. We've never been so connected with the whole world, this worldwide net, yet we've also never been so disconnected. It's very interesting.
From ourselves.
Yeah. From ourselves, from community, interaction.
That's a big thing I experience. Yeah, this is also feeds a lot into my art practice now as well, is investigating this state of mind that we're shifting into. Dux is a great example. When we go down there, we don't have any phone communication, so my crew are expecting deliveries of staging or food and stuff like that. And some of my crew members come up to me going like, "I can't call them. I don't know where they are." And it's like, just trust they'll get here on time.
Used to happen all the time.
We always had, we've never had the ability to call someone instantaneously for a long time. But now that we can communicate instantaneously with everyone, the second we take that away, we become extremely paranoid. We don't trust each other anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary, and it's taking away those objects we've become so attached to. This instantaneous communication, it's made us kind of vulnerable. Really vulnerable. Yeah.
It's got to be done. It really, part of any healthy lifestyle, we got to unplug every now and then.
Yeah.
It's been a while for me because of that it does make it harder on one level to get shit done.
Yeah.
But in terms of keeping our sanity and our balance,
it's crucial. Even just for a day.
Yeah.
Even just take a Sunday just to turn the phone off.
It instantly feels better. Get out in nature,
reality.
Get your feet on the earth, jump in the water, whatever it may be. You instantly feel better. Everyone does.
Yes.
Everyone says it.
And even simply just experiencing your own body, just the reality of what your body actually is and what you're doing, And that's why, I've really gotten in touch with doing Vipassana now, which is, traditionally you take 10 days without any of that connection or talking or anything, like really limiting that communication. And you become so much more aware of, the beauty that is yourself and the nature around you.
Yeah.
And we have so much distraction from that beauty. And a lot of us are quite miserable. We have all this access to information and technology which is designed to help us, but actually we're not happy. And happiness comes from realizing the limitations of your body and where the edge of your being interacts with nature. And I've had a lot of really interesting lessons recently about that. And I feel like the more we're challenged physically, the more we learn about ourselves, the more happier we are. And we are kind of putting ourselves in these safety bubbles, more and more retreating into the virtual, out of the physical, out of danger, which in a sense actually makes us miserable.
Yeah.
And this is some, big stuff I'm kind of investigating.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it keeps coming up in these conversations, how necessary it is for us to, get scared, get uncomfortable. Yeah. And especially in our culture, we have become so comfortable, even if we are not rolling in cash, we're looked after for the most part.
We are so looked after. Yeah.
And we're very, very lucky in that. But that often can become the biggest vice for people, the biggest crutch, these crutches that people never get off. Yeah. And these comfort bubbles that we create can just stymie our energy. And you were bang on. It creates this fog of unhappiness. So we're intentionally putting ourselves out of our comfort zone, intentionally scaring ourselves, doing shit that scares us, which on one level sounds absurd. Like, why would we do that? But we kind of need to. Evolutionary, we've been scared daily. And in a lot of parts of the world, people live like that.
Yeah.
And I love to visit places in the East and quote unquote third world countries where apparently these people, and of course there is a lot of suffering and a lot of poverty, but I also see a lot of joy. Of course, there's that real deep edge of suffering where people are in so much pain. But then there's that general viewpoint that we would look at as a poverty society, yet they're joyful and happy, and there's connection, and there's family and the community. And that was one of the most enlightening experiences I've ever had, was the first time I went to Bali and just witnessing that. I went there on a party trip and was a teenager, similar to a lot of the crew that would go to Dougs. And that was an enlightening experience to see, holy shit, they're just eating rice out of the same bowl with their hands, and they have very little. They're all sleeping in the same bedroom, yet they look like the happiest people I've ever seen.
They look a lot happier than a lot of people in well-endowed Western countries, and that's what Dougs does. These young kids, they have to learn how to survive. Some of them don't know how to camp. They get cold, they get cut, they get beat up, but they're so freaking happy because they've been challenged. And one of my best experiences from last year, probably my favorite experience of 2018, I joined what's called the Walkadjura Walkabout, which is this anti-uranium mining peaceful protest walk that happens in the desert in Western Australia between the towns of Witaluna and Leonora. It happens over the course of 1 month, and it's organised by some facilitators from the Conservation Council WA. And you walk with Indigenous elders who are currently fighting some court battles to protect their land from being mined for uranium right now. And they walk between 4 proposed uranium mining sites in the desert, which takes about a month. And so this is land that you'd usually drive by at 110 k's per hour and you'd not even really notice. But you take your time and you walk across the land and you learn the stories. You sit by the fire each night and listen to the aunties and uncles tell you about the trees and the animals, the medicine plants that are around, and you realize just how rich that desert is, how teeming of life it is, and you start to see it in all its glory, and you fall in love with it. And of course, you don't want anyone to tear it up to pieces, and that's a beautiful experience. And for me, I was only fortunate to go for 10 days. I got so much out of that 10 days because of this idea of being challenged and the intrinsic nature of suffering. And suffering, talking about suffering, I think suffering is so crucial. It's so key to our growth. And my little mini story, which made me, it was just like the simple, humble enlightenment. So the first day I get there on the camp, I need to go pick up some firewood. Being the brash city slicker that I am, I go out and start gathering dried twigs and leaves, getting covered in dirt. I start cutting up my hands, and when I get back to camp, I'm like, ow. Oh, I'm picking up something like, I got these cuts on my hands. These are my hands I play guitar with. The voice inside my head is going like, complaining, whinging. Yeah. Within 24 hours, I'm feeling that pain, but I'm not reacting to it. I'm loving it, in fact. And I'm waking up every morning and I'm just radiantly alive because I'm realizing I'm coughing up dust. I'm freezing cold at night and I'm sweating during the day and I'm walking for ages. Can't shower, I can't wash, have no phone, no computer, no nothing. I just have to be totally present in my body, and the pain becomes a reminder of how beautiful my body is. And I fall in love with it. And that's such a crucial thing. And I got so much out of that. Like, I think I mentioned before, there's this realizing where you end and where the environment begins. Yeah. That barrier, that border. And being reminded of your limitations is so humbling, but in a sense empowering to realize that you're just a small little ant, really, especially when you're in that massive desert with nothing else around.
Yeah, Maharaji Neem Karoli Baba, one of his repetitive teachings was suffering is grace. Suffering is grace. And the conceptual mind, the analytical mind, our small little egos just react to that. How could you say such a thing? How could a saint say suffering is grace? And that's the thing, the mind can't really get that. Yet when we often zoom back in retrospect and look at our last 10 years, most of the growth and the awakening and the opening of our heart has probably come from suffering. It's this kind of spiritual sandpaper that just opens us up.
Yeah.
At the time, it sucks. But like you just expressed, if we tune into it, very quickly after this, radiance and aliveness is already blossoming forth. But again, this modern society of our comfort zone, it's kind of like...
It's suffocating us.
It's suffocating, and it allows us to kind of sleepwalk through life. And then we can create these little dopamine hits with our phone and just keep checking everything and put on a song and flick through it when it gets a bit ordinary.
Yeah.
Like we don't have much patience generally, collectively. Yeah. So we're just flicking and looking and scrolling and swiping. Those little dopamine hits that aren't the true radiance and true joy, but it's a little dopamine hit. It can be very entrancing. And I find every now and then I've succumbed to that. I've locked into it.
I succumb to it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I'm constantly catching myself going, oh, shit.
Yeah. So I can't imagine being this younger generation that can't recall a time where they didn't have that. It's just in their circuitry. Schools have got iPads in front of them. You can do great stuff with it for sure.
Yeah.
But just this familiarity of like swiping and flicking and liking and being entered into social media at a super young age, it would be, I'm sure, very confusing to get in touch with a different possibility. A different possibility without the phone, without the iPad, without the being logged into the internet, and it's just crucial. Couldn't emphasize that anymore. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront. For these kids, huh?
Yeah. That's just a byproduct. It's like, and a big thing for me with my projects is finding ways to share the lessons without ostracizing or polarizing people. So I have an activist heart. I do a lot of projects that are based on environmental ideals. But I don't want to approach them. I don't want to be a preacher. And I think in this world of, hyper egoic attitudes, which is fueled by this communication, instantaneous network that we're part of, everyone gets very reactive, very polarized by things.
Outrage.
And if you
culture.
tell someone, you have to think this way, you might have someone that'll go, okay, I will. For that one person, you get someone else going, well, no, fuck you. I'm going to think the other way. This reactionary type of thing. And the reason why I went on the anti-uranium mining walk is because I have a project that I've been developing part-time over the last year. And now I plan to really push this in 2019. It's called the Selfless Orchestra. And so it's a combination of a lot of different streams of my previous artworks or creative streams. So primarily it's music-based. I compose music with a upwards of a 13-piece band. Very lucky to have some string players from the Persephone Orchestra involved, keyboards, didgeridoo players, flutes.
Wow.
It's the whole smorgasbord. And every performance we do will be a different combination of players, but we have some core members there. But what we decided, a few of us are very activist-minded and environmentally focused, and they originally came about from having a very heated conversation with my partner about the Great Barrier Reef. And she was really involved with a project called Art for Reef. And, we're feeling a little bit discouraged. We're doing lots of work to try and help people get some word out, some more awareness, try and raise some money for some the restoration groups that are out there. And it feels like we fall on deaf ears sometimes, and we're kind of discouraged. And while we're having this moment, we're getting emotional and feeling pain for the earth and how it's being treated, and sometimes people's indifference towards it. I was listening to some really beautiful instrumental music, and I just had this idea, and I knew that I had previously worked on an environmental documentary called Frackman about the fracking coal seam gas industry in Australia, and that was quite successful by a beautiful director called Richard Todd, who's been a big influence in my life. And I'll talk about storytelling as a big aspect of this in kind of my new work. So I knew that he had connections to documentary filmmakers in Queensland who had been filming the bleach corals, the degradation, but also the Adani coal mine that had been approved that they were going to dredge the reef for. things that I'm fundamentally against, but I'm not going to walk down the street with a placard telling people how to think or becoming just another, quote unquote hippie with a, whatever, making some noise. I just didn't think that was working. So I thought I could take the footage that my friend has got, I could collect some of the musicians that I know from my other projects together, and we'll just write some really beautiful music, present the images as they are, and don't tell people how to think, but just make a poetic statement and not a political one. But donate money from the ticket sales, get people to come see some music, have a night out. If you feel inspired by what you've seen, by the story that's being created for you, and you want to do something about it, we just say to the audience, well, you already have because we've donated some of your ticket money towards that cause. So there's also an idea of audience empowerment there as well. And there's no lyrics, there's no slogans. It's just come, observe and absorb and make up your own mind. We can't really tell people how to think, but I feel like we can create spaces to tell stories. And I think that's a big thing that we need to get back into is, storytelling as a way of sharing knowledge and truth rather than yelling at someone on the internet. I think the keyboard warriors out there are just wasting a lot of energy. And I think we have to find new ways to create spaces to, not necessarily change people's minds, but bring them into a spot of consciousness. So Camp Dougs does that. I want to bring people into a space where people become more conscious of the environment, the beauty of nature and that isolation. So with Selfless Orchestra, I want people to come and learn about a particular environmental issue and present these images and let them make up their own mind if they want to do something about it and give them the tools to do so if they choose, not because I've told them to. And so we have done the performance twice. We're going to be doing it, I'm not sure when this podcast will come out, but on February the 9th at the Perth Fringe Festival. And it hasn't been announced yet, but we'll be launching our first recorded material at the Fremantle Arts Centre on the 23rd of March.
Wonderful.
And after that, we'll be having an album coming out. And it's been such a pleasure. It was a big idea. When I got the idea, when it came to me, I saw everyone that should be involved. And I was like, I can talk to this person to be my, audio technician. Oh, this person would be great on drums. And I had this list. It came super clear. I knew exactly all the people I would contact. And the next day, I was just like, I gave a few of them a call, being like, man, you were in my thoughts last night. I had this crazy idea. Maybe we'll do it in a couple of years. And everyone was just like, why would you wait to do that? Let's do it now. Let's catch up next week. Let's make it happen.
That's the best.
Yeah, it was super organic. It's been one of the most complex projects in terms of organizing. Where we play in the middle of the room. We don't play on the stage. We like to play down in the audience. We have everyone around us. And the first performance, we had 4 projections, massive screens in all 4 directions. So the audience would sit looking at us, but they'd always have the vision in their peripherals. So people wouldn't be looking at us and end up just getting sucked into the vision, into the story. And it's a complex beast, but it's been, I don't want to say easy, but it's been just organic, Everyone gets the idea. Everyone just goes like, yeah, I want to do something about this. Let's just do something beautiful rather than yell at people. It's
a powerful point. I mean, there's so much of that cultural war going on. I mean, especially in America. I mean, it's so polarized in America, and we spend a lot of time over there. And
it must be intense over there. Yeah.
It's intense. And again, I think with the online platform, a lot of people are getting outraged that probably wouldn't if it wasn't for the online medium. Like if we were all face-to-face or needed to pick up the phone and make an actual phone call, a lot of these petty but just polarizing conversations, because people can write, anyone can write a blog, anyone can do a podcast now, anyone can just comment, and it can even be done quite anonymously now.
Yeah.
So there's all these polarizing conversations creating all these cultural wars,
a lot of anxiety,
civil wars, really,
which is really not needed. It puts a lot of us on edge, and it's not productive in any way.
It's not
for either polarizing view, no matter who you're shouting for.
Yeah,
really, at the end of the day, it's just creating anxiety. The information slips in and out. We don't really remember the message, but we do feel the intensity of these. There's a lot of anger and fear that gets projected, and sadly, it sticks with us without really tangible results.
And even in terms of activism, which is pretty much always coming from a very good place, but if it's done from a place of anger, It's
not
just creating more polarity.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can even see it in our own relationships. Say there's someone you really care about and they're doing a lot of toxic shit to their body and you really want them to create change in their life. We can see it even with that.
Yes.
The more we tell them, like, do what's right and be better to your body or whatever, the more we come onto them, the more most likely they put up the wall and get even more resistant. And that's the same case with activism. The more angry we get,
The more we polarize somebody. Yeah.
but it is challenging to speak to that when it is coming from such a good place. It is a good thing to get active in the world and to speak up. We need that. But I think we also need a practice such as yoga, meditation, which we can convert all of that raw, reactive, polarizing anger into something much more wise, much more big mind, in which we can literally see the situation from the other person's perspective as well.
Yeah.
As hard as that is, when we're angry and weak and it's just blatantly obvious that someone is doing or a group is doing something outrageously toxic and hurtful to the land and people, of course we want to just roar and speak up. But to quiet down, quiet the mind, open the heart, get in touch with a deeper wisdom, then get angry.
Yeah.
It's much more impactful. And Gandhi spoke of that all the time.
Yeah.
And when the British were invading India, the politicians would come up to him and ask him, well, do you have any advice? Like, well, what should we do? You know? And he'd, for quite a while, would just say, like, I don't know, the answer's not coming, I need to meditate on this. And they're like, fuck, we need an answer now, come on.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't have the answer yet, I need to meditate. And every week he'd have a day of silence, no matter what was happening. Every week he'd have at least a day of silence. And the British were coming in strong. It hasn't come to me yet. I need to meditate. And then all of a sudden it came to him that they were trying to tax the Indian public on salt, and they need a lot of salt. It was just raunting them of all their money, just salt. And then he went and marched to the beach and mined his own salt, and just that broke the back of the English right there. Just a simple act of going and mining the salt. Yet he only got that insight of something so simple and so gentle in a moment of getting really quiet and listening. So he was converting like confusion and anger and people wanting an answer from him now with, fuck, I don't have a proper answer yet. Like, he probably wasn't saying fuck.
Who
Something
knows?
equivalent.
Maybe Gandhi had a foul mouth. I don't know. I never met him.
He was quite fierce, apparently, actually. So who
Yeah.
knows? And then, so it sounds like you do something similar as well. Like, would you say a lot of your creativity comes from when you're quieting down and it just downloads into your experience, huh?
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's in those times of peace when you create that space. And yeah, it's about not reacting with hatred, or at least in these more, activism or, they are reactionary at the core of it, but not in a way of hate or fear, but coming from a place of love. And creation is love, to make something, you need to pour your heart into it. And so that's what we've done. And I remember the first time we met, we wrote a manifesto, and it said to create something uncompromisingly beautiful that works between the worlds of hope and despair to create a positive change on planet Earth.
How beautiful.
Yeah. Because we have to be real. There's darkness and there is light. You can't be, and when I say come from a place of love, I'm not, like peace and rainbows and unicorns, it's like just being centered in oneself and not reacting with aggression, but seeing things as they actually are and making a decision with a clear heart about how we should proceed in these sometimes confusing times, they're wonderful times that we live in, but I think we just all need to become more conscious as we trundle forward into the 21st century.
Yeah.
And something else I haven't talked about is my work with the artist Stellark, which also taps into all the things we're talking about. So
go for it.
Seems
Talk
like a
away.
good time.
I'll pour some tea while you talk.
Okay, you get on the tea. So talking about this idea of technology and our relationship to our bodies. So I've been very fortunate to work collaboratively with an artist called Stellark, who is, I believe he's 74 years old now, Australian artist, usually based in Melbourne. I met him while he was temporarily based in Perth, just by chance. He's very famous for being one of the pioneers of body suspension art, which is when you put hooks in yourself and lift you up by the skin. He was one of the, I believe, the first person to actually do that in the 70s in Japan. He's very infamous now for a particular art project he's done the last 10 years. He has a third ear, which is actually on his forearm. And so it's like 3D printed grafted technology is now part of his body, and he's extending that. It's going to be internet enabled. You'll be able to listen through it very soon. That's something
For real?
For real.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's all about redefining the body, or questioning what the body is, especially in relationship to technology and the objects that become extensions of our body,
Is that robot?
This is the robot
project?
thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Keep talking.
Yeah, so I think this just taps into a lot of the themes that we've been bringing up so far about consciousness and technology. And so when the first project we did together, it's called Rewired Remixed, and so he does a lot of work with robotics. He's very interested in exploring the hyper-extended body through technology. And so the project involves him. He's a performance artist, so he is live, and I kind of pull the strings, so to speak. He wears a exoskeleton robotic arm, so down his right arm, which articulates his fingers, wrist, elbow, and shoulder. And he can't move this. He's locked in. The robot has control of him. But the thing is that we have control of the robot. So the robot is internet enabled. Anyone in the world can control this robot from their phone, from their computer. So you can log into a website, and if he's performing, we'll have him in a gallery. We've done this all around the world multiple times. There'll be live streaming cameras into the gallery so you can see him, and a control panel so you can move his arm, and you can take control of his body. And so he gives up his present being in his physical self to someone else, anyone else. And while he's doing that, he will wear this for 6 hours straight, minimum. He's about endurance, about pushing the limitations of the body. And while he does that, he's also wearing VR goggles and isolated headphones. So he can't see or hear anything in that room where his body physically is. But we collaborate with two artists each time. One artist will be in a separate country with a live streaming camera. So he'll be Stellark's eyes. And in another country, another artist will have a pair of microphones attached.
Right.
And he'll be his ears. So he virtually becomes someone else's hearing, someone else's sight, and someone else's body for 6 hours. So we're taking the idea of the disconnection that we get from when we look at a phone, we're not being ourselves. We're seeing through someone else's eyes. I mean, we do this all the time. I'm guilty of it too. I go on Instagram. I'm not me anymore. I'm someone else. I'm virtually inhabiting someone else's life. I'm taking myself away from the beauty and the reality that is me. And so we said, let's take this to the extreme. Dive into three, technically unlimited, but, 3 separate consciousnesses and giving up that, surrendering our body to that. And it's very interesting how his mind begins to lose perception of the body. The interesting thing is when he comes back out of it, when we unplug him after 6 hours, then the first couple of times we did it, it took a good 15 minutes for him to be able to actually stand because he had to plug himself back into his own body.
Wow.
And we're doing this all the time, on a miniature scale. We're, literally taking our senses and we're disconnecting them and we're sending them across the planet. And is that a good thing? I'm not going to say yes or no, but we need to look at what we're doing to ourselves and with these virtual experiences. So that's been a really interesting collaboration, and we've gone on to do another project. And so I travel with him a lot, and he's a very well-established artist. And I've just been very humbly appreciating, being with this guy and following him around. And started documenting him to hopefully make maybe a documentary about him and our experiences together. And he's an incredible human being, a very big inspiration, and I'm excited to see, where we go together.
How interesting! What a great experiment.
Yeah. And so the current project we're doing now is called Stickman, and he wears a full body exoskeleton, so not just an arm, but the entire thing. And that is enabled by what we call a digital voodoo. So there's a smaller version of the robot in the gallery, and people can come up and move his body by just manipulating a small robot. So it's giving up your complete physical self to someone else through technology, which is things that generally could be happening in the future as we become more virtual. And how much are we going to give up, our own selves to someone else, or the limitations of that? And what this artwork is about is just about questioning our future, where we're going. Not saying that's necessarily we're going to a bad place, but let's be more conscious about how we integrate this new technology, the what ifs. And so that's the TV series I'm producing at the moment. So I've just putting the finishing touches on a 6-episode short documentary series for the ABC. It's called Biogenesis, and it'll be coming out hopefully April. Haven't locked down the release date yet. It'll be like an iView series. And that is all about biological art. And so technically, Stellark and I, we do biological art because we have the biology of the human interacting in these art installations. But through this world, I've met many incredible artists that use living material as their canvas, in a sense. And this is all very paradigm-breaking stuff. A lot of people don't know it, but in Perth, Australia, there's a laboratory, which this is where the series has come from. It's called Symbiotica. They're based at the University of WA. They are like pioneers of this biological art, and they are world-renowned. They're absolutely massive in Europe and the States, but in Perth, no one knows them. Well,
Interesting.
they do. People do know them, but I feel like it's something that Australia should be proud of, that we've got this really game-changing art collective here, but they're kind of under the radar, which works to their benefit in some ways because they do things that are quite ethically questionable. They really challenge people, and because when you start manipulating life, especially human life, you're, in a sense, you start to play God.
What's an example?
So the first episode of the series is my friend Guy Ben-Ari, and he has a project called Self, which is spelt CELLF, so like a cell. And what he's done is he's used a type of stem cell technology to basically isolate his neurons, his brain cells, living outside of his head. And he's put them into an electrode array. So neurons communicate through small amounts of electricity to send information around the brain. So he's put this onto an array that detects when these neurons communicate to each other. And he's plugged that into a giant analog synthesizer. So his brain technically makes music by itself.
Wow.
And so it's a living entity. It's a biological, technological hybrid. And so at the end of the day, it's a fun project. This plays gigs. It can be stimulated by other electricity. So you can plug a microphone into it and someone can jam with it. You can, if I talked into this microphone, it would send electricity to the neurons. The neurons would shock and fire back and make music in response to what I play.
Wow.
So it's, living material, and it's no different to, in a sense, jamming with another human, albeit not quite as intelligent. We're talking only a couple of million neurons as opposed to hundreds of billions that we have inside our head. So it's a figurative brain. But the questions that get raised is like, how do we treat these beings? Like, this will be something that we'll have to encounter in the future, is this blending of the biological and the technological. When does it become a conscious being? When do we have to treat it in the same way as we treat a human? It really challenges a lot of people. And another example is an artist called Mike Bianco, who's fascinated with bees. He's a cook. He's very interested in the hospitality, how we receive food. So, of course, a lot of our human consumption of food actually comes down the food chain because of the pollination of bees. And as we know, there is a bit of a honeybee crisis happening in the world with core collapse disease. And so he wanted to investigate just the relationship between human and bee, how intricate that is, how much our lives are actually responsible, or the result of what is actually the slavery of the European honeybee, put into hives and made to work, And to do this, he made a figurative biological art piece, which is a type of cell called a hybridoma. So I'm getting into some pretty deep stuff.
Keep going, man. I love it.
Yeah, but this is what the series is about, just to give you an idea. Hybridoma, which is a new technology where you can fuse two cells together. So you can take, like, a cell is composed of a membrane and a nucleus. And so you can dissolve the membranes of two cells, put the nuclei together, and reform the membrane around it. So in a sense, becomes a chimera. And so he's taken one of his cells, a human cell, and a bee cell, and he's made himself into a bee-human hybrid. And this technology is really interesting because it actually comes about by the technology, hybridomas are used to create immortal cell lines. So when you have antibodies like white blood cells that fight certain diseases, they have a limited lifespan. But cancer cells are actually immortal. So what scientists have been doing, they've taken an active antibody that can cure a disease, they're combining it with the nucleus of cancer, so it becomes an immortal
Wow.
cure that can be produced infinitely and never dies. And so this is, we're starting to really manipulate life on this intrinsic level.
Huh.
And it's like, are we playing God? Who knows?
Who knows?
And so these are very big things. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, man. I could listen to you talk about that for hours. Keep going. I mean,
Yeah.
You should bring jellyfish into the equation. Have you heard of some jellyfish that are immortal? Even
Yeah.
if you like cut them up and separate them.
They don't have brains.
Yeah.
But they're alive. Yeah. Yeah. That's, the jellyfish are, that's a good point.
Jellyfish, like, I can see mushroom spores being an interesting experiment.
I'm fascinated with mushrooms and mycelium.
Yeah.
Spores are beautiful. Wow. I'd love to, I've been, in the background, I would love to do my own biological artwork with mycelium because I think it's so fascinating
It's fascinating.
how it creates its own environment around it. And people theorize that we are the product of, mycelium, that humans exist because mycelium wanted us to be there.
Right.
There's some really interesting stuff. And the way that they form these networks and the way that we form networks are exactly the same.
Yeah.
In our neuron patterns, our blood cells and the way our cities are laid out, they all just seem to share the same blueprint set by the great living mass that is actually, digesting the soil and regenerating everything.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Dr. Paul Stamets is revealing awesome projects and experiments on how powerful mushrooms really are. Did you see that experiment he did on a big oil spill?
Yeah.
In which he showed one patch being just oil left alone, and then the other patch with mycelium placed into it or injected into it or whatever, and then it became an oasis in no time, and converted the oil into healthy mushroom matter, didn't it?
It's a beautiful intelligence. I'm very interested. When I find time with my other projects, I would love to find artistic ways to articulate the intelligence of mycelium in new forms, because I think it's beautiful and a lot of people aren't aware of its existence.
And even on a lot of brain disorders such as Alzheimer's, he's been showing the stack of lion's mane mushroom with niacin, vitamin B3, and psilocybin. So the psilocybin obviously lights up the neural pathways. The lion's mane has more of a nourishing effect on the neural pathways. And the niacin as well tends to draw heat into damaged pathways. So he's showing incredible data at how effective that's been in rejuvenating and even reversing things such as Alzheimer's. Incredible.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
Lion's mane.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that there's a lot of research coming in and it's looking at mushrooms in this way, because I think there's untold secrets in that world for us to benefit from and to really help us as a species.
Yeah, and even the stigma on psilocybin, for a long time, I think possibly residue from the 70s of... because it was being used medicinally, in psychotherapeutic, even one-on-one sessions with a psychotherapist, with a psychologist, psychiatrist, psilocybin to really treat PTSD and depression, anxiety. And then I think 70s partying with it. I think quite a few people started combining it with other drugs and overdosing and taking it into more toxic measures. But it seems to be coming full circle again into more of a therapeutic framework. And I think a lot of the negative perceptions about quote unquote magic mushrooms is being healed, and a lot of the more positive benefits are coming forth again, which is exciting because it's a potent medicine that we can really bring reverence back to. I mean,
it's sacred. Especially
sacred.
The clinical trials they're doing on chronically ill patients. I saw a fantastic documentary about that. I can't remember the name, but it was just investigating near-death states and using psilocybin to bring peace.
Yeah.
And for that alone, it's worth considering.
Alone.
But there's probably so much more we can benefit from if we just lose the stigmas and redefine our relationship to these beautiful entities that provided for us. So, I personally would love to do some work with mycelium in this biological art context. You know, just create fun ways for people to learn these new things. So that's why this biological art exists. It gives us ways to ask these questions. If there's been walls put up, or for example, using stem cells like my friend Guy did, there's a lot of stigma around stem cells and how we can use them. And he's just looking at a different angle. And it's like finding a fun way through music in that example for people to go like, how is this working? Oh, I can learn about the science, about these breakthroughs and this way that we're manipulating life, and go like, oh, well, how are we going to use that in the future? How are we going to use that for artificial intelligence, and like, what's the right way, what's the wrong way? If we don't ask these questions now, who's going to get a hold of this technology? Who could potentially use it for the wrong means?
Right.
And so it's beautiful stuff. So that's in the finishing stages. It's all been shot and edited, and now we're just doing all the final touches of audio and color grading. And it's been a big effort. And it was a bigger project than I expected. And I expected it was going to be big.
So that'll be on ABC, is that right?
Yes, cool. ABC and iView hopefully in April. And
exciting.
So this is my first TV series, I guess, for a broadcaster. So it's a big breakthrough for me. And I'm still just putting finishing touches, but now that's getting underway, and I'm wondering, like, hopefully I can do some more. Again, it's just a storytelling aspect. It's like, hopefully I can have a bit of a platform to tell stories about these things, especially things like mycelium, create some spaces for us to discuss. And, thank you to the ABC for giving a voice to me and allowing me to give a voice to these artists and share some of their really bold ideas, and hopefully it can bring a bit more of shine a light on some of the talent that we have in this country. Yeah. And in Perth, all these artists have come to this laboratory in Perth, WA, to learn these techniques and how to do this manipulation of life and ask these big questions. Wow. It's beautiful stuff. But in the midst of it, I was definitely challenged. I was constantly surrounded by these existential ideas, and buried so far in this world. I found sometimes I was kind of going like, who am I? It's
which is a great contemplation to dive into anyway.
Exactly.
I think we should do that regularly.
Definitely found myself challenged by just being submerged in these ideas and just kind of really looking at myself in different ways. And that's the beauty of this artwork, is it reflects on all of us, because we are all living assemblies of cells and cultures and neurons and tissue. And what is this? Yeah.
They're powerful contemplations, which ties back into what you're doing with Doogs as well, getting people out in nature and connected. It naturally rejuvenates that, like, who am I? Because we can get so caught up in our box of, this is who I am. That's why I asked in the beginning, like when someone you first meet asks you, like, what do you do? Like, do you have fun with that answer? Because typically we identify so heavily with that. Like, what do you do? And we've gone to school to learn, who am I going to be? Yeah. And we get this degree or multiple degrees, and okay, this is who I am. And it's a real issue. The quarter life crisis is the beginning of it. The quarter life crisis, like, fuck, I thought this is who I am. Yeah. And like, I worked so hard for it, and I ticked all the boxes, and fuck, like, this isn't who I am. And often if attention isn't brought to it, and they don't have platforms to get to things like Doogs or get to flow, or they don't have a yoga practice, or just intelligent, empowered peers that can help shine the light and shine a bit of wisdom there, it's agonizing. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, things like suicide and depression has just escalated. It's a real predicament, because that who am I is a powerful contemplation. Yeah. And if we've just been brainwashed by society and, learn this and try hard and get your job, and that'll be who you are.
And then you'll be good from then on.
Yeah.
No way. Yeah.
And then the drugs and alcohol thing is often a unconscious seeking to get out of our usual ways of doing, our usual patterns, literally get out of our mind and, is this who I am? And again, if there isn't a framework or a disciplined practice, then we become reliant on the drug. Yeah. Okay. That gives me a glimpse of, this is who I am. But then that's not it either, because we keep crashing down and then we're back in the rat race. And it's a vicious cycle.
It is. And I think I've made peace with the fact that I'm never going to truly know who I am.
Right.
It's in the search for that I keep learning, discovering new things.
That's beautiful to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Yogi Dev and I spoke about that quite a bit in our last podcast, like the wisdom in not knowing, the beauty in not knowing, and just relaxing into, I don't know.
Yeah, being peacefully ignorant.
Yeah.
I keep saying, like, when I was young, I knew a little, and now that I'm old, I know nothing.
Yeah.
You know? I've been really grateful for the experiences, the people I've met, the artwork I created, the things I've seen around this planet, which I've got to see all the different corners through my creative work. It's taught me so much and made me realize how little I know.
Yeah.
You know? And it sounds like a bad thing, but no, it's very humbling.
Humbling.
You know? And then make peace with the fact that, hey, at least I know a little. At least I've seen glimpses of the beauty, but I can never behold all of it. But hey, I can keep searching for other little chunks and inspiration, because there's so much to find out there. And that's
well, I think that kind of cosmic bewilderment, like, it's so big and so complex and so multidimensional. Having that, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
At the same time, like a daily practice that you speak of Vipassana meditation, of getting in touch with the unchangeable, getting in touch with the simple unknowing or knowing or whatever word we want to give it, but the nothingness. So like all of the experiments you're doing and the investigations into form just being so wonderfully unknowable, yet the nothingness of Vipassana, of meditation, which is nothing. You know, all these Eastern methodologies have no word to actually give that state of Vipassana or meditation, but like emptiness or nothing.
Yeah.
So it's like the curiosity of like, whoa, like it's so incredible being in these bodies and these cells, and I don't know where the hell it's going. And that bewilderment and curiosity mixed with nothing.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's a beautiful balance, I think.
Yeah, totally. Just to be, grateful for what we do have, and what we do have is these beautiful instruments. And these, this reality is we're very beneficial in that we perceive it so clearly, and that we have these tools, these limbs to sculpt it in whatever image we want. You know, and because when I say we're playing God, we play God every moment of the day. You know, we've been really empowered in this reality to change it. And to influence it, more so than I think a lot of us are aware of with our own thoughts. You know, this reality to me, I kind of perceive it as a big lucid dream sometimes, you know. And sometimes you're aware that you're dreaming, so you can manipulate it. Or sometimes you're just asleep and you're not really in control. But at the end of the day, I think it's just a big shared dream, and it can become whatever we want if we really believe it. And I think that's one thing I've learned, is that, I've had these ideas, I've seen things in my head, and then I've gone, it just needs to happen, and it does, exactly as I perceived it. And this reality is a lot more malleable, and responds to your thoughts and intentions a lot more than I think we give ourselves credit for. So to be a human being on this planet is a gift. To grow old is a privilege. And I never went the path of finding the stable job. I never had the quarter life crisis, because my life is consistently in a crisis mode of sorts. I said it in the best way possible.
Organized chaos.
Organized chaos is my life, and hey, I'm just going to continue on that path, and see where it goes. And it's all just a temporary journey on an organic spaceship around the sun a few times, and you may as well just experience as much as possible, because, who knows what happens after this.
Totally.
We can't get too attached to those things, these material things, this comfort zone. Again, it's it can be a trap. So, I live outside the comfort zone. I thrive outside the comfort zone.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's an inspiration as well. It can be very scary for people to take that leap. You hear of it 24/7. Of people wanting to jump into projects that you're speaking of and having that creative spark. We've all got creativity flowing, but for many of us, it's been suppressed or dampened, or we've cloaked it with fear or old stories that we can't do this, can't do that.
That's right.
To take that leap is scary. It's scary to not know, to not have that predictability, that structure that is pretty predominant in Perth. In some places it's not so predominant, in creative kind of meccas. But places like Perth, there's definitely a center of gravity where people crave that structure, that planned week.
Yeah.
And often it's scary if you don't have that 9 to 5
step out of it.
Structure. It can be very scary. So it's an inspiration that you haven't taken off to Sydney or Melbourne or LA, which you might, but we need that vibration here
Perth
as
has
well.
given me so much.
Yeah.
I always assumed I would move, but I've stayed put, and I've just had so much beautiful creative energy from this city. There's a really good community here, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, and I've been to many places in the world, and I've collaborated with lots of different people from different countries, but sure, I was born here, so maybe a bit biased, but people in Perth really support each other in a way that I haven't seen in too many other countries. And so I think we've got something very special happening here.
I very much agree. It took me getting out of Perth to fully see that and appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think that is a healthy thing to do if people have the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think one of the traps of being in a place like here where very commonly we can get confined into our own house, our own car, and if we haven't established community and good friendships, it can feel, especially if one is newer, they've just recently felt some awakening or some creative spark, but prior they've just been with, I don't know, old school buddies or old work buddies, and all of a sudden, I'm craving community and I'm craving like fellow artists to commune with. It's here. It is here, but because of our tendency to go from our house into our cars and into that next house, it's not like New York or Toronto or Montreal, in which it's like one big community where everyone's just on top of each other walking, and there it's very obvious, that kind of sense of community. But here, unless you've established it like you have and like I have, people can feel quite alone in it and crave to be in like Melbourne or Sydney or these bigger cities where they're seeing people interact,
Yeah, and I think I was fortunate, like music was my gateway. I just loved to make loud noises with my friends, and so I went to other gigs, I met like-minded people, and from there everything else flourished, and I was very fortunate to find that. And I think that's a really strong thing about Perth. The music scene is really great.
It's great, yeah.
And it comes from that isolation. It's funny, talk about what you're talking about there was a personal isolation that people suffer from. People say Perth is the most isolated city in the world. It's actually not. Honolulu is.
Is it?
Yeah. Geographically, anyway. But in terms of a physical isolation, because we're spread out and we have this different way of transport. We just spend a lot more time by ourselves, and not. Again, it's just that environment thing. We're not really embracing that environment, even be it a metropolis environment of people, of noise, energy, challenges, the miniature sufferings that we encounter. We're very fortunate here to be born in a place like Perth, sometimes to our detriment, which is true.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about before about taking risks with your personal journey. I remember the last kind of job that I had where I worked for someone else. I had some kind of messages, like higher messages, or the signs I thought I needed to kind of get out of that job, but I was so comfortable. Like I had good pay. I was technically doing something creative. It was for an advertising agency. I was making animations and commercials and television content, which the craft of is fun, but the messages maybe I didn't necessarily agree with. But I was comfy as hell.
Comfy as hell.
Yeah, right. Good choice of word.
Yeah.
But I knew I had to get out, and I decided to take a risk and quit the job and work for myself. And I was scared shitless, I was so uncertain if I was doing the right thing. And I remember that was the thing I had to face, was that risk. And fucking I'm glad I took that risk. It forced me to really get out there and start doing my own thing and pushing myself. And now I'm in a better place than when I was working for that company, except I only work on things that I believe in or that creatively fulfill me. And I perceived like it took some guts, and I was very uncertain. I could have happily rested on my laurels and just ducked into the 9 to 5 and been there, but I didn't. And sure, my life, maybe in some aspects have been more challenging, but it's been a lot more rewarding, and really that's the most important thing for me. I'm glad I'm challenged. Keeps me on my toes. I don't get complacent. And I see you as a person that's the same way, like you're stepping out there and doing some bold things and pushing yourself, and I bet you're glad that you've done that stuff. And,
it's all I've ever known. I've never had a typical job.
Cool.
So it's all I've actually ever known.
Great.
I've never worked in an office, or actually I have for a very brief period, but it's just not for me. I've always worked either one-on-one with people in a yoga type way, or a health coaching type way, or this type of way. It's just been very spontaneous, like looking back, very spontaneous. And I definitely do recall a societal pressure in the early days of like, come on, you just finish your teaching degree and like become an actual school teacher and just do that. But it didn't feel right. It just didn't feel like my path. It just never felt natural. It never felt like passion. So all these deeper passions kept bubbling up.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that, like yourself, I listened to those. But there was societal pressure and doubt and come on, just do something more secure. That was the dialogue from everyone around me. Do something more secure, secure. But I'm
Nothing's
glad.
truly secure.
Nothing's secure. That's the thing. And that first Bali trip really helped me find a deeper trust and security, or at least
security in this,
security in the heart.
This vessel.
And help me not take things so seriously. I do recall when I first came back from that Bali trip, I was quite depressed in a way, just like, fuck, like just get me back to Bali. Like I at that time, I was finding it hard, finding my own autonomy, being in my heart and just resting there. I needed regular trips away, regular trips to places where creativity was just nourished, places like America, New York and LA and Sydney, and then more spiritual places like India and Bali. Like I yearned to just feed off that. I needed to keep feeding off it. And then I came back and like, fuck, it doesn't matter what people expect of me or put onto me. It doesn't matter. And gradually my inner clarity and my feeling of the heart and my feeling of my dharma, of what I'm truly meant to do, became louder than the expectations of others, which I think is quite crucial, just kind of listening to that objectively. I think that is really helpful for people to, again, I think a daily practice helps, because we can't really
so much, man,
conceptualize that and just, okay, well, that sounds good. Yeah, of course, I want my inner passions and my inner heart and my inner voice to speak louder than society, of course. But it's tricky how loud society is. And it is like a center of gravity. It's okay, it's like all the sheep are going that way. Like it's very alluring and almost magnetic. So to have a daily practice seems quite crucial to quieten down, open up more space for what's true, and then go about another day following that truth.
Yeah, and just a bit of time to be silent and just not tune into that noise each morning, be it you do yoga practice, meditate, or even just sit in your garden with a cup of tea. Just bring it back to the reality of what you are, this collection of cells, atoms, energy, electricity. Simple notion that you are just a collection of particles that temporarily exist in space, and none of it really matters.
None of it matters. So what's coming up next, my man?
Selfless Orchestra is definitely where I want things to go at the moment. So we'll be playing in a couple of weeks, part of Fringe Festival. And,
cool.
TV series comes out in April. I'll be doing another performance with Stellark in Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada in May, which I talked about previously. And beyond that, I'm playing some gigs of my old first punk band, actually, called Injured Ninja.
Cool.
And Camp Dougs is hopefully happening in March. We've actually had some things come up, so I'm not too sure. We might need to postpone the event. Not too sure at the moment, but very least there'll be another iteration of the festival happening in March in Perth, WA. So,
and did you want to speak a bit about the project overseas to do with sound, or is that still off the cuff a little bit for later?
Yeah, that's something else. I'm just we talked just before the podcast. Now I've done this one series for the ABC. I've got some new ideas running through my mind, but they're just only starting to simmer. Okay. So they're not ready to be out in the world just yet. But
cool.
I've always had a fascination with instruments and sound and harmonics, and I recently got a tattoo that kind of represents that on my arm to remind me every time I pick up an instrument.
Show the camera that for people watching.
Is that a good spot for it?
Yeah. Actually, show it to that one and we can zoom in.
That one.
That's beautiful.
There. So if you can see. So this is just a reminder. This is like a little philosophy for me. I pick up instruments a lot. Whenever I pick up my instrument, I'm reminded that the nature of all things is waves or energy in motion in constant states of flux. And this is the harmonic series, which is the Fibonacci golden ratio, the mathematics of sound, which is the basis of modern music. And in a sense, it's all of us. We're all sound. We are all matter vibrating. And that's the nature of all things. And I think there's the most beautiful medicine, the most beautiful healing I think I've encountered is the power of music or of sound, of that raw energy, that resonating chaos that has just been sparked by the Big Bang and is still ricocheting all around every little particle around us. And I think there's some fascinating truths in the science of sound, what sound is and how sound works and what we are. We are sound, And I wrote down a funny thing in a little kind of session towards in the last year. I remember I was kind of jamming out some creative ideas and I wrote down on a big piece of paper, to become the sound is the ultimate objective.
Yeah.
So that's my plan. Someone asked me what your New Year's resolution was. I was like, to become the sound.
Just dissolve into pure sound.
What are you doing in 2019? Oh, I'm dissolving into pure sound.
Just constantly humming. What would your sound be?
Well, I know it. I can't produce it. I'll probably sound ridiculous.
Try and produce it.
Constantly, but like with more frequency. If I could sing in all the octaves at once.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like the sound of infinity.
The sound
of everything.
Of everything.
Yeah.
Yes, which I believe is currently all around us, but we've blocked it out. Our senses have reduced it to small streams of sound, but I think we're actually enveloped in constant sound and light, this beauty of nature that we're not really seeing. And I think sometimes when we listen to harmonically rich instruments, like a sitar, for example, is a good one, we can drop into these states where we're just hearing the resonant frequencies of oneness, that connectedness, that energy, that vibration that really is actually kind of moving through all of us and keeping us all interlinked. Now I'm getting really esoteric, but I'm
excited to hear and see where that goes, because obviously, as you can see around me, that's a big passion of mine as well.
Yes.
And that's had a huge impact on my life, very organically, and just gradually sound, especially primordial sound, these and just seeking all the different traditions, all the different parts of the world that have a very similar sound, like the didgeridoo, the Tibetan singing bowls, the sitars, the tempuras, the Indian instruments, not to mention in Europe, like if you track down some of the European flutes and some of the European drums and whatnot, Bali, like every part of the world, Africa, these incredible instruments that bring us back.
Yeah.
To the sound, to om, to here.
Yeah, to peace, to where we need to be, the present. And I think sound is an amazing conduit for that. And I think there's a lot to be explored there. So, yeah, hopefully if I get another chance to tell some stories through the medium of television and video, I'd love to explore some of the origins of these instruments, So we'll see what happens next. But I'm going to try wait until this one is out into the world and give that some love. And,
You're a very interesting dude, Steve. It's been great talking with you. You're a true visionary and inspiration, and it's been wonderful getting to know you more and
Likewise.
Sharing your beauty with the community.
Yeah.
I want to do this again. Huh?
Yeah, I would love to, man.
Yeah.
No, you're very inspiring, and I get a lot from your practice and watching how you work, and it's great to share these ideas with someone like yourself and other people watching. So
Wonderful.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Great speaking, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, everyone. All the best.